Branches snapped behind him. "Stop the prince." The command echoed through the forest like thunder. Aurelian Nightwind did not stop. Silver light streaked past his shoulder as a spell struck a tree beside him, exploding bark into the air. The prince sprinted through the moonlit woods, cloak tearing on branches, heart pounding like war drums. "Your Highness," another voice shouted. "Return now." Another blast of magic tore through the night. Aurelian dove over a fallen log, rolled, and sprang back to his feet. He could already feel their magic closing in. The Starwardens were the fastest hunters in the Fey realm, and tonight they were hunting him. A glowing blue lake suddenly appeared through the trees. Perfect. Aurelian ran faster. Behind him, armored figures burst from the darkness, their eyes shining with enchanted sight. "Corner him." Too late. The prince leaped from the rocky edge and plunged into the lake. Cold water swallowed him whole. The moment he sank beneath the surface, the magic tracking him scattered like shattered glass. Above the water, the Starwardens stopped at the edge of the glowing lake. "Where did he go?" one of them growled. Their captain stepped forward, staring into the rippling water. "He is here," the captain said slowly. "The lake is masking his aura." "So we wait." The captain's jaw tightened. "Yes." Deep beneath the surface, Aurelian held his breath and smiled faintly. They could wait all night. He had nowhere else he needed to be. A week earlier, none of this had seemed possible. The moon court of Lunareth was silent that night, its towers glowing softly above the clouds. Prince Aurelian moved quietly through the palace halls, a lantern in one hand and curiosity burning in his chest. He had been told his entire life that the mortal world was dangerous, unpredictable, savage. Humans were reckless creatures who destroyed everything they touched. The Fae had withdrawn from them centuries ago after wars nearly shattered both realms. Those were the stories the court repeated. But the locked door at the end of the archive hall told a different story. Aurelian knelt beside the ancient lock, whispering a small spell. The metal clicked open. Dust filled the air as the door creaked inward. Inside were forgotten books, histories, maps, and one thin journal tied with faded ribbon. The prince untied it carefully. The pages were filled with sketches of human villages, markets, families, children laughing beside rivers. But what caught Aurelian's attention most were the notes written in the margins. "Humans are chaotic," the writer had scribbled, "but their kindness appears when least expected." Another page showed a drawing of a woman helping an injured stranger. Another showed farmers sharing food during winter. Aurelian frowned. This did not match the stories he had been told. "If this is true," he whispered softly, "then why were we taught to fear them?" Footsteps suddenly echoed down the hallway. The prince snapped the book closed and hid it beneath his cloak. "Aurelian," his father's voice. King Valor Nightwind stepped into the doorway, his presence filling the room with cold authority. "What are you doing here?" the king asked. "Just reading," Aurelian said casually. The king's eyes narrowed. "You know this wing is sealed." Aurelian shrugged. "I was curious." "Curiosity is dangerous. So is ignorance," Aurelian replied. Silence fell between them. The king's gaze hardened. "The mortal realm is forbidden for a reason." "You say that," Aurelian said, holding up the journal, "but whoever wrote this believed humans were capable of kindness." Valor's voice turned sharp. "That book should have been destroyed centuries ago." "Why?" "Because it is wrong." The king stepped closer. "You will forget what you read tonight." Aurelian's jaw tightened. "No." The word echoed in the room. For the first time in years, the prince saw anger flash in his father's eyes. "You are the heir to Lunareth," the king said slowly. "You will obey the laws of this realm." Aurelian said nothing. The king turned away. "Return that book and go to your chambers." The moment the king left, Aurelian looked down at the journal again. Curiosity burned hotter than ever. That night, under the cover of darkness, he crossed the border between worlds. The mortal forest smelled different. Earthier. Wild. Aurelian moved silently through the trees until the forest opened onto a small village nestled in a valley. Humans. Dozens of them. They walked through the dirt roads carrying baskets and tools. Children chased each other near a well. It was louder than the Fey realm. Messier. But also strangely alive. Then he saw her. A young woman crouched near the edge of the road, carefully freeing a fox from a hunter's snare. Easy, she murmured gently. The fox trembled, but did not bite her. There you go, she whispered as the trap released. The animal bolted back into the woods. Aurelian watched from the shadows. A moment later, an elderly woman approached carrying 2 heavy water buckets. Let me help you, the girl said quickly. No, Mira, I can manage. You always say that, Mira replied with a smile, taking one of the buckets. They walked down the road together. Aurelian tilted his head slightly. This was not the cruelty he had expected. Interesting, he whispered to himself. Then a sudden pulse of magic rippled through the forest. The prince's expression darkened. They had found him. He turned and ran back toward the woods. Now, a week later, he was still hiding beneath the lake. Above him, the Starwardens waited patiently. Aurelian slowly rose toward the surface, careful not to break the water. When he finally emerged, the forest was silent. The hunters had left. Persistent as always, he muttered. He climbed onto the shore and froze. A young woman stood only a few feet away. Mira Rowan stared at him with wide eyes. Water dripped from his silver hair. Moonlight reflected in his glowing eyes. Her voice came out as a whisper. You're Faye. Aurelian said nothing. For a moment they simply stared at each other. Then Mira dropped her herbs and ran. Wait. The ground beneath her foot crumbled. She slipped toward the ravine edge. Aurelian raised his hand instantly. Viral. Wind surged upward. Myra's fall slowed. She landed safely against the rocks below. When she scrambled to her feet and looked up, the prince was gone. Only the glowing lake remained. Her heart pounded wildly. What just happened? Far away, hidden among the trees, Aurelian watched her leave. His curiosity had just turned into something far more dangerous. And neither of them knew it yet. Mira did not stop running until the lights of Briar Glen appeared through the trees. Her heart still pounded violently in her chest. A Fae, she whispered breathlessly. She had heard the story since she was a child. Every villager had. The Fae were beautiful and dangerous. They could charm your mind, twist your fate, steal years of your life with a single bargain. Yet the one she had just seen saved her. Mira slowed near the wooden bridge leading into the village. She placed a hand on the railing and tried to steady her breathing. Why would a Fae save me? She murmured. Mira? She turned. Her older brother Tomas was approaching with a lantern. There you are, he said, frowning. You're late. Mother thought you got lost in the woods. I'm fine, she said quickly. Tomas studied her carefully. You don't look fine. I just slipped near the ravine, she replied, forcing a small laugh. Clumsy me. Near the ravine? Tomas' voice rose. Mira, that place is dangerous. I know, she said softly. He shook his head. Next time take someone with you. Mira nodded, but her mind was far away. She kept seeing the image in her head. Silver hair. Eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The Fae prince standing in the lake. Later that night, Mira sat by the small desk in her room. The lantern beside her flickered softly. She opened her worn leather journal. Most pages were filled with drawings of plants and herbs. Tonight, she turned to a blank page. Her charcoal pencil began moving slowly. A face appeared. Sharp features. long silver hair, eyes that seemed to glow even on paper. She paused halfway through the sketch. "Who are you?" she whispered to the drawing. Meanwhile, miles away, Aurelian leaned against a tree beside the glowing lake. He had not returned to Lunareth. He should have. The Starwardens would still be searching. But instead, he found himself staring at the path Mira had taken when she ran. "That was reckless," he muttered. He replayed the moment in his mind. Her terrified expression. The way she nearly fell. The way she looked back after he saved her. Not hatred. Not anger. Confusion. Aurelian exhaled slowly. Humans were supposed to hate Fae. Fear them. Yet something about her reaction was different. "Curious creature," he said quietly. He glanced toward the village lights in the distance. "I wonder if you're still thinking about me." Days passed. Aurelian stayed hidden in the forest, carefully avoiding the Starwardens' patrol routes. But something kept pulling him back to the lake. And finally, one quiet afternoon, he returned. The forest was peaceful. Sunlight shimmered across the water's surface. And there she was. Mira Rowan sat on a flat stone near the lake, her legs folded beneath her. Her journal rested on her knees. She was drawing again. Aurelian smiled faintly. "Already?" He stepped closer, but remained hidden behind an invisibility spell. Mira flipped through several pages before stopping on one. Aurelian leaned slightly to see. His eyebrows lifted. It was him. The sketch was remarkably accurate. The same silver hair. The same eyes. Even the slight tilt of his head. "Impressive," he whispered. Mira sighed softly. "You're not real," she murmured to the page. "You can't be." She tapped the pencil against her chin. "Still, thank you." Aurelian blinked. "Thank me." He hadn't expected that. Mira closed the journal slowly and stared out across the lake. "I wish I could ask why you helped me." The prince crossed his arms thoughtfully. "Because you almost died," he replied quietly, though she couldn't hear him. A playful idea suddenly sparked in his mind. "If you're drawing me," he said with a small grin, "then perhaps I should introduce myself properly." He stepped toward the water's edge. With a flick of his fingers, the lake responded. Ripples spread across the surface. The water rose gently. Small glowing shapes formed. Birds, made entirely of shimmering water. Mira blinked as one splashed beside her foot. "What?" Another bird fluttered into the air, sparkling in the sunlight. Mira jumped to her feet. 3 more water birds glided across the lake. "Okay, that's definitely not normal," she said nervously. Then she saw him, standing on the opposite shore, silver hair blowing softly in the breeze, arms folded, watching her. Myra's eyes widened. "You!" Aurelian gave a slow, exaggerated bow. "Your humble servant," he said with playful sarcasm. "Don't bow at me." Mira snapped. "You scared me half to death." "You were the one trespassing near my lake," he replied calmly. "Your lake," she repeated incredulously. "Yes." "You live here." "No." "Then it's not your lake." Aurelian smirked slightly. "Technicalities." Mira crossed her arms. "You're a fae. That is generally how people describe me. You're supposed to be dangerous." "I can be." Her expression hardened. "Then why did you save me?" For a moment, Aurelian said nothing. Finally, he shrugged. "You looked like you needed help." "That's it?" "Yes." Mira stared at him suspiciously. "That doesn't make sense. Humans rarely do." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Aurelian said lightly, "that you're fascinating." Mira blinked. "Fascinating?" "Yes." "You watched me, didn't you?" she said suddenly. Aurelian tilted his head. "Perhaps." "You did. Observing is not a crime. It's creepy." Aurelian laughed softly. "I saved your life and you call me creepy. You disappeared afterward. That seemed like the polite thing to do." Mira groaned. You are unbelievable. And yet you drew me, Aurelian replied smoothly. She froze. How did you? I saw your journal. You what? Before she could say another word, Aurelian stepped backward. His body dissolved slowly into silver mist. Wait, Mira shouted. Too late. He vanished completely. Mira stared at the empty shore. You are the most annoying fae in existence, she yelled across the lake. Hidden in the trees nearby, Aurelian laughed quietly. For the first time in centuries, the Prince of Lunareth felt something dangerously close to excitement. But far away in the forest, four figures watched the scene from the shadows. The Starwardens had finally found him. And this time, they had also seen the human girl. Hidden in the trees, the Starwardens watched the lake in silence. Their captain lowered the enchanted lens slowly. The prince has grown careless, he said quietly. One of the hunters beside him frowned. He spoke with the human. Yes, that is forbidden. The captain's expression hardened. More than forbidden. Dangerous. Another Starwarden crossed his arms. What are your orders? The captain glanced toward Mira, who was still pacing near the water, clearly frustrated. We return to the king, he said. But first we observe. And the girl. The captain's voice turned cold. If she becomes a problem, we remove the problem. The hunters melted back into the forest. Meanwhile, Mira kicked a small stone into the lake. Arrogant fae, she muttered. She crouched again and opened her journal. Her pencil moved quickly, adding new lines to the sketch. Now the drawing showed him bowing dramatically across the lake. She snorted. Show off. The sunlight began to fade as evening approached. Finally, she stood up and brushed dirt from her dress. Fine, she said to the empty water. Disappear again. She turned toward the forest path. But before she could take more than 2 steps, a voice spoke behind her. You are very loud for someone talking to herself. Mira spun around. Aurelian stood beside the lake again, arms folded. She nearly dropped her journal. You? Yes, me. I thought you left. I did. Then why are you back? Aurelian shrugged. You seemed upset. I wasn't upset. You called me annoying. That was a fact. He smiled slightly. I've been called worse. Mira stared at him, trying to decide whether to be angry or relieved. Finally, she asked, do all fae appear and disappear like ghosts? Only the charming ones. You're not charming. That hurts. Good. Aurelian chuckled softly. You're very bold for a human. And you're very strange for a fae. Silence settled between them. Then Mira said quietly, why are you really here? Aurelian looked out across the lake. For the same reason you came back. She frowned. I came for herbs. And I came, he said calmly, because I was curious about you. Mira blinked. Curious? You freed a fox from a hunter's trap. So? You helped an old woman carry water. That's normal. You drew the face of a stranger who frightened you. She hesitated. That was just observation. Aurelian tilted his head. In Lunareth, kindness like that is rare. Lunareth. My home. The Fae realm. Yes. Mira studied him carefully. So you're not just some random Fae. No. What are you then? Aurelian smiled slightly. Someone who is currently avoiding being dragged home. Why? Because my father would be very unhappy to know where I am. And where are you exactly? The mortal world. Mira crossed her arms. That sounds like your problem. It is. But you still came back. Yes. Why? Aurelian looked directly at her. Because you're the first human I have ever spoken to. Her eyes widened slightly. You've never talked to humans before? No. That's ridiculous. Perhaps. Mira shook her head slowly. So the mysterious Lake Fae Prince is just curious. That is one way to describe it. Are you actually a prince? Aurelian hesitated. Yes. Mira stared at him. You're joking. I rarely joke about royal titles. You're serious. Unfortunately. She laughed suddenly. This is unbelievable. What is? I almost died in a ravine and got rescued by a runaway fey prince. Life is strange. That's an understatement. A breeze rustled through the trees. For a moment they both stood quietly. Then Mira asked softly, Do you plan to disappear again? Eventually. Why? Because staying would cause trouble. For who? For everyone. Mira frowned. Sounds dramatic. It is. In the distant forest, the Starwardens moved silently between the trees. Their captain raised a hand. Now. For figures stepped into the clearing. Aurelian's expression instantly darkened. Stay behind me, he said quietly. Mira blinked. What? The Starwarden captain spoke calmly. Prince Aurelian Nightwind. Mira looked at Aurelian in shock. You weren't exaggerating. No. The captain continued. Your father orders your immediate return. Aurelian sighed. That was fast. Come peacefully. And if I don't? The hunters raised their glowing weapons. Then we escort you by force. Mira whispered, Are they here because of me? No, Aurelian said softly. But they will blame you if I don't leave. The captain's eyes shifted toward Mira. The human must forget what she has seen. Aurelian stepped forward instantly. No, Prince. She is not part of this. The captain's voice hardened. Your curiosity has already crossed the boundary between realms. Mira stepped beside Aurelian. I can hear you, you know. The hunters ignored her. Your father will decide her fate, the captain said. That is not happening, Aurelian replied. Magic crackled in the air. The Starwardens prepared their spells. Mira looked at Aurelian nervously. This seems bad. It is. What do we do? Aurelian grabbed her hand suddenly. Run. A blast of silver magic exploded behind them as they sprinted toward the forest. Branches whipped past as they ran deeper into the trees. Mira gasped, Your life is insane. Aurelian laughed breathlessly. You have no idea. Behind them the Starwardens pursued, their magic lighting up the forest. Mira glanced back. They're gaining. Aurelian looked ahead toward the dark forest path. Then we run faster. Where are we going? He smiled slightly. Anywhere but here. Mira stared at him. You realize this is the worst day of my life. Or the most interesting. She groaned. Definitely the worst. They disappeared deeper into the forest. And far away in the Fey kingdom of Lunareth, King Valor stood on the palace balcony watching the moon. The prince will return, he said coldly. Beside him, an advisor asked quietly, and the human girl? The king's voice was merciless. If she stands between my son and his duty, then she will be removed. Back in the forest, Mira and Aurelian ran beneath the moonlight. Two strangers. Two worlds. One impossible connection. And the beginning of a story neither of them could escape. If you enjoyed this story and want to see what happens next between the runaway Fey prince and the stubborn human girl, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments below.